Hello and welcome. I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching The World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines this hour. Hamas's Al-Qassam Brigades say they will hand over the body of an Israeli hostage found in a Gaza tunnel, the 16th of the 28th to be returned under the ceasefire agreement. The transfer is scheduled for around 8 p.m. Gaza time. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says Ukrainian and European officials will meet at the week's end to discuss a ceasefire framework. He stresses it is not a plan to end the war, but a first step to restart diplomacy through negotiations. The US military launches strikes on 4 suspected drug smuggling vessels in the Eastern Pacific, killing 14 people and leaving 1 survivor. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says this comes as US presence in the Caribbean escalates, along with Washington's tensions with Caracas. Speaking to business leaders in Tokyo, President Donald Trump says US-Japan ties are strong, thriving and prosperous, adding they will soon be greater than ever before. He praises his meeting with Prime Minister Takaichi, calling her a delight. President Donald Trump slams Fed Chair Jerome Powell as incompetent, telling business leaders in Tokyo he has a long list of potential replacements. Powell's term ends in May as the central bank prepares for a high-stakes meeting this week. President Trump says his upcoming summit with China's Xi Jinping in South Korea will be great for everybody as trade hopes rise after talks in Malaysia. He spoke at an event in Tokyo attended by top business leaders, including Apple CEO Tim Cook. The UN warns Hurricane Melissa will bring catastrophic damage as it hits Jamaica with 300-km/hour winds, storm surges and deadly flooding. Authorities have ordered mandatory evacuations as the Category 5 storm, the island's worst this century, makes landfall. US Customs and Border Protection Chief Gregory Bavino is ordered to appear in court after being seen throwing what appeared to be a tear gas canister at protesters. The federal judge wants assurances that a restraining order limiting agent force is being followed. Now we start this hour in West Asia, and Hamas's armed wing, the Izz-ad-Din al-Qassam Brigades, have said it will be handing over the remains of another hostage, which would be the 16th of 28 that Israel has demanded as part of a ceasefire agreement in Gaza. Taking to their Telegram channel, the brigades stated that they will hand over the body of an Israeli captive that was recently found in one of the tunnel routes in the Gaza Strip at 8 p.m. Gaza time. This comes amid claims from Israel alleging that Hamas have returned remains of Israelis that were not part of the agreed-upon 28, constituting a violation of the terms of the ceasefire deal. We're now joined by Matthew Vadum, an American journalist, joining us live from Washington. Matthew, thank you very much for joining us. Of course, hello. A pleasure to have you. Of course, this ceasefire is extremely fragile, as it seems, and this is a huge announcement. Another hostage's remains are set to be returned in the coming hours. Is this likely to de-escalate tensions a little bit further, given that Israel has vowed its response after it has claimed that some of the remains that have been returned to Israel have not been what was promised by Hamas?
Right. Israel has said that some of the bodies that have been returned to Israel were not hostages were not people taken captive during the October 7th or around the time of the October 7th, 2023 massacre in Israel. And so they're saying that Hamas is technically not complying with the agreement. I'm not sure if they've said where they think the bodies have come from. Maybe they were Israeli soldiers. I don't really know. But Hamas is certainly taking its time complying with the agreement, the peace deal. And, maybe some of their excuses are valid. They said that it may take extra time to recover some of the bodies because of the scale of the destruction in Gaza. And maybe that's true to an extent, but I just have difficulty accepting anything that Hamas says because, I don't believe that in the end Hamas wants peace. I think Hamas views the peace deal as an opportunity to reorganize itself. Sort of like a corporation in Chapter 11 bankruptcy in the United States. It's not a real bankruptcy. It's just giving you time to get your creditors off your back. And that's what I think Hamas views the peace deal as. So it's hard to know if they're just stalling and making up excuses, but I'm just very suspicious of anything that Hamas has to say.
Matthew, one could play devil's advocate here and say, what leverage do the remains of these hostages have, given the ceasefire is technically still in place, although we have seen violation allegations on both sides?
Right.
So what leverage?
Well, the other Hamas and their allies
they're also
have said,
also they are of course claiming that 80% of Gaza has been destroyed, and Hamas is saying, with of course the help of Egypt, that it is going and trying to revive and reclaim those bodies from the rubble. So what political leverage would Hamas have in trying to keep hold of those bodies from the state of Israel?
I don't know if leverage is the word that I would use. I think that Hamas likes to stall and drags things out because they know that they will not be condemned by the international community. Whenever Israel does anything that, seems like a violation or like they're dragging their heels, Israel is attacked, on all sides. Whereas Hamas can get away with stalling. So I don't know that leverage is the word that I would use. I don't know if they're trying to extract that implies they're trying to extract further concessions from the Israeli side. I don't know if that is the case. I suspect Hamas just wants to prolong the process as long as possible because I don't think they view the peace deal as real. They view it as another opportunity to rearm and to reorganize themselves and attack Israel. Look at their vicious reprisals that Hamas has carried out against the population of Gaza. People accused of being Israeli collaborators have been hunted down and killed in the streets. Hamas is not an honorable organization. Now, obviously, things are messy in war, and unpleasant things can happen. But I think that most of the time, Israel abides by its agreements, and I think the problem here is mostly with Hamas.
Okay.
That's just my opinion, though.
Yes, Matthew, do stay with us. We have further updates coming out of that region where Israeli government spokesperson Shos Bedrosian has now announced the claims of violation by Hamas, making it official that Israel is now in fact considering all options to respond to this alleged violation of the ceasefire agreement. Let's take a listen in.
Tonight, Israel received the remains of a deceased hostage from Gaza, and following the identification process, it was determined the partial remains belong to Ofir Sarfati, a 27-year-old who was murdered in Hamas captivity after being kidnapped from the Nova Music Festival. Tonight, Israel received the remains of a deceased hostage from Gaza, and following the identification process, it was determined the partial remains belong to Ofir Sarfati, a 27-year-old who was murdered in Hamas captivity after being kidnapped from the Nova Music Festival. There is a meeting taking place the Prime Minister is holding, and in terms of consequences for Hamas, nothing is off the table right now. But all of this is in full coordination with the United States, with President Trump and his team.
Okay, Israel has vowed a response to this. Benjamin Netanyahu has said that nothing is off the table. Matthew, what do you think that this could mean? Do you think that this could mean further military escalation?
I think that is what Prime Minister Netanyahu is implying. Yes, that there could be further military action taken against Hamas in Gaza, yeah, it's a thinly veiled threat that if the other side doesn't start living up to its obligations in the peace deal, that Israel will use military force. So whether that will actually happen is a separate question.
Okay, Matthew, do stay with us, and we next move on over to Europe, where Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has announced that Ukrainian and European officials will meet at the end of this week to work on details for a potential ceasefire framework. Zelensky emphasizes that the proposal is not a plan to end the war, but rather a first step towards restarting diplomacy through direct negotiations. The meeting aims to outline terms that could eventually pave the way for broader peace discussions with international support. European leaders have welcomed the move as a new sign of renewed diplomatic engagement. We are once again joined by Matthew Vadum. He's an American journalist to discuss this ongoing situation. Matthew, of course, President Zelensky has said that European and Ukrainian officials will meet at the end of this week. How would you assess European support during this conflict? Of course, many nations have been unwavering in their support for Kyiv. America, of course, have been their strongest financial backer, particularly during the Biden administration. During the Trump administration, it has been wobbly, to say the least. However, the support now seems solid. What are your thoughts on the Europeans' stance and what this potential ceasefire framework might look like?
I really can't say what the ceasefire framework might look like. We have a sticking point with Ukrainians, and I'm not saying Ukrainians are wrong, but they don't want to give back the territory. Is it Donbass, I think it's called, that was seized by Russia, and they don't like that Russia has access to the sea there, and which helps its navy and its shipping of products abroad and so on. I have a hard time saying what shape it could take, except maybe a ceasefire. But ceasefires between Ukraine and Russia tend to be very short-lived. But nonetheless, they're going back and they're trying again, and God bless them. Maybe they'll succeed this time. I think that it is helpful to have these talks, but most of the time they haven't really gone anywhere. So we can only hope that things are resolved. On the American side, President Trump supports Ukraine, but his support has seemed lukewarm at times because on his right flank in the Republican Party are a lot of people who do not support the Ukrainian cause, and they don't really care if Ukraine is occupied by Russia or not. And so President Trump has been constrained in his response, even though I think he supports Ukraine. But his overriding concern right now is he wants peace. He wants peace, and he considers this the pursuit of peace to be more important than other objectives. He wants peace in Israel and Gaza, and he wants peace in Ukraine and Russia. And he views himself as a peace president, so he's going to keep pushing these points, and maybe the Ukrainian and European Union intervention will help in that regard. I can only say time will tell.
Yes, Matthew Verdum, thank you very much for joining us here on NewsX World. It's been a pleasure to have you on the programme. We now move on over and back to the Indo-Pacific, where the United States and Japan are unveiling a massive $550 billion investment package, marking one of the largest bilateral economic commitments in history. Speaking at a signing ceremony in Tokyo, U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick announces that several major Japanese companies are stepping up with major investments. SoftBank is committing $25 billion, while Bechtel and GE Vernova each plan to invest up to $100 billion in new energy projects. Westinghouse is also pledging up to $100 billion towards nuclear reactor development. Lutnick confirms that Toshiba and Carrier are among the firms joining this investment wave. Japan's industry minister says the country's automakers will continue strong US investment as part of this long-term partnership. The projects focus on energy, nuclear and semiconductor development, reinforcing the US-Japan alliance as a cornerstone of global economic and technological cooperation. Let's listen in to what US Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick had to say.
I'm incredibly proud to announce that this evening we're going to be signing $490 billion of investment. So the commitments ensure the economic and national security of the United States of America. We're going to be developing energy. We're going to be developing nuclear, semiconductors, and strengthening the entire domestic supply chain. So I'd like to kick it off, right? And the first company I'd like to announce is Westinghouse, which will invest up to $100 billion in nuclear reactors to restore U.S. energy dominance.
A man accused of fatally shooting Japan's former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has admitted to murder 3 years after the assassination of Japan's longest-serving premier stunned the nation. Tetsuya Yamagami, who is 45 years old, was arrested at the scene of the shooting in July of 2022 after allegedly firing at Abe with a homemade gun while the former leader was giving a speech during an election campaign. Yamagami blamed Abe for promoting the Unification Church, a religious group he resented after his mother donated some 100 million yen to it. After Tuesday's first court session, up to 17 more hearings are set to take place by the year end before a verdict is handed down on January the 21st of next year. Let's listen in to what the defendant's lawyer had said.
それは法的な可能性としてはもちろん検察が死刑求刑をする可能性はゼロではないと思っています。ただ現実本当にそこまで求刑するかどうかこれはちょっとまだもちろんわからないところではあります。そういうこともあり得るという前提でこちらは準備はしています。
We're now joined by Dr. Satoru Nagao. He joins us live from Tokyo in Japan. Dr. Nagao, 3 years after the murder of Shinzo Abe, and this man finally confesses to shooting the Japan's longest-serving prime minister with a handmade gun. Why was this assassination such an important part of Japanese history?
Yes, this is important because Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is a rare character who leads policy of the Indo-Pacific. Concept of the Indo-Pacific, or idea of the Quad, this is the idea the Prime Minister Shinzo Abe introduced and persuaded other leaders and implemented. So that's why he was a historical politician. And even if he was ended his tenure as a prime minister, still he has many big group in the ruling party, including the current new prime minister Takaichi, and he shows strong influence in the ruling party. Especially he tried to persuade the other Japanese politicians who cooperate with Taiwan. And Prime Minister Shinzo Abe also talked about a new type of nuclear strategy to strengthen the nuclear umbrella, extend deterrence of the United States, the nuclear sharing like the NATO type. So simply said, US deployed the nuclear weapon to Japan, and Japan joined the decision making to use it, but this is nuclear sharing. So that is the idea that he is promoting the nuclear umbrella with the United States is one of the issues that he is seeking. So view from this, without him, such kind of issue was a taboo and it is not easy to talk. But because of him, the people can talk about this, but just the beginning stage he was assassinated, this was a big impact. Indeed, in Japan, some of the people are quite anti-Abe, very strong against him. And this Yamagami as a hero now, in the prison, there are many presents he received. But at the same time, such kind of situation proved that how valuable Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, he is influential, important character, and today, the President Trump clearly mentioned Shinzo Abe many times, and 4 times in the beginning, but after that, clearly, repeatedly he mentioned Shinzo Abe was a very important friend of him, but at the same time, very important, influential politician in the history. So that's why this assassination is one of the turning point of the history, I believe.
And the alleged shooter, Yamagami, blamed Abe for promoting the Unification Church. What is that, Dr. Nagao?
This is not a big impact indeed, because the Unification Church tried to support ruling party because they want to connect with the ruling party. And they try to connect with President Trump also. But they invest money to this party in Japan, US, or other country. But at the same time, what kind of policy, what kind of the benefit they receive is still unclear. So they want to create a connection with this influential politician. And because of the donation, these politicians try to address the event in the Unification Church. But at the same time, that is all the benefit to this Unification Church. Indeed, there is no illegal connection. There is no something. The Unification Church got something support from the government. So that's why the image is, of course, one group donated and try to receive something is not good. But at the same time, indeed, such kind of deeply connection itself is not exist. Just receive the money and try to reply. That's all.
Yes, Dr. Nagao, thank you very much for joining us here on the program. It's been a pleasure to have you on. China's foreign ministry has reacted to spying allegations from the United Kingdom. Foreign Ministry spokesman Guai Jianqian stated that reports of spying are disinformation, calling the allegations vilifying and smearing. The current spy issue between China and the UK centres on the collapse of a high-profile espionage prosecution in September of 2025. The case involved 2 British men accused of spying for Beijing, but the prosecutors dropped the charges after the government failed to provide key evidence defining China as a national security threat at the time of the alleged offences, triggering a major political row in the UK. China has stated its relations with the UK are based on mutual respect, while cautioned that such a move would backfire. Let's take a listen in to the Chinese spokesperson.
中方已多次就有关问题阐明严正立场，我们坚决反对炒作所谓中国间谍活动，对华进行污蔑抹黑。关于中英关系，中方对发展中英关系的立场是一贯的。发展中英关系的基础是相互尊重，推进合作的本质是互利共赢，英方应该正确看待。一些人热衷炒作中国威胁，把合作当成零和游戏。如果英方任由反华势力逢中必反、挑衅滋事、任意妄为，最终只会得不偿失。
Now we turn to Africa, and Madagascar's military-led government, which seized power this month, appointed a cabinet of mostly civilian ministers, which includes some of the prominent critics of ousted President Andry Rajoelina. The appointments mark a key moment in Madagascar's political turmoil as the military consolidates power while trying to address its economic hardship and political divisions. The military staged a coup earlier this month after former President Rajoelina fled Madagascar following weeks of youth-led protests, after which Colonel Michael Randrianrena was sworn in as an interim president days later. Meanwhile, Colonel Michael Randrianrena has said that a committee led by the military will rule up to 2 years alongside a transitional government until new elections can be organised. But that's all that we have time for this hour. Keep watching NewsX World for more international news updates.